baby. Baby, are you taping? Oh, yeah. Hey, 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 hey. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Baby, come on.
What's up, America? Welcome back to your favorite weekly show. You know, we busting the dough like this every week. It's Mac and Free, but our names are not important. I am Mac. He is Free. Free, what's going on today, good brother?
What's going on, baby? Just ready to get it in. Let's go.
Hey, man, we got to try to get some new stuff in, man, while we talk we're going to talk about things today, man. You know, Makur has officially made me look like Del Damas around here, but you know, we won't gloat on that too much. We will move on and move along to a story that has kind of captured my heart as, you know, former Carolina Panther Cam Newton has accepted a deal to the New England Patriots. He went in on that deal for $1.1 million for 1 year, with $6.5 million in incentives, and $550,000 of that deal is guaranteed. Now, I wanted to talk about this and talk about the disparities amongst the quarterbacks in the NFL in particular, because I think this is a conversation that kind of gets swept under the rug a little bit because it's easy to hide. But again, follow the money. And I learned that from Cool Lester Smooth in The Wire. You follow the money, you never know what you come up with. And after I followed the money, the first thing I did, Free, was I looked at Cam as opposed to some of the backups or his counterparts in the NFL now. And I noticed that, you know, you compare him to Chase Daniel, someone like that. Chase Daniel's making $7.5 million this upcoming season. And as a result, Chase Daniel he played one game more than Cam did last year. He played 3 games. He threw for less yards, yet he threw 3 touchdowns. I think he had 1 interception. Cam had, I think, 2 interceptions. But you got to remember, Cam was playing hurt. But Chase Daniel, who was a backup, not a starter in the NFL, is getting paid significantly more money than Cam Newton. Where the problem is when you look in the NFL, in the history of the NFL, over a number of years, you begin to see what is a disparity, particularly in the quarterback position. Not wide receiver, not running back, not defensive lineman. At the quarterback position, you begin to see the disparities in pay. And while we have Jameis Winston, who just left Tampa Bay, went on to New Orleans, who did not have the best season you could imagine, but he still had a good one, even though he was offensive and defensive player of the year. He threw 30 interceptions, but he still threw 5,000 yards, and he threw 30 touchdowns last year. But he goes into the next year with a league minimum veterans pay. You start to look at Ryan Fitzpatrick, who has not received that kind of allure, and he's thrown a lot of interceptions, which is the reason why I bring up him. But in terms of Cam Newton, and I looked at Cam Newton, because there's not a fair comparison between Jameis Winston and Cam Newton, because Cam Newton's a former league MVP, and Cam Newton has played in a Super Bowl. But what I did find interesting is when you think about quarterbacks of any race, and you think about injury and what these quarterbacks have to endure in terms of injury and how they come back, and you hear people use the excuse for Cam that, hey, look, he's injured, they want to know what they have. And then I went back to one quarterback that stood out the most to me was Sam Bradford. Stayed injured his entire career, barely played, but his last NFL contract was 2 years, $40 million, $20 a year. Again, Sam Bradford never finished a season, nor has Sam Bradford played in the playoffs, nor has Sam Bradford ever finished a season with an MVP, nor has Sam Bradford played in a Super Bowl. In his very last season, Sam Bradford signed a 2-year deal for $40 million. And then I think about this past couple of seasons ago when Lamar Jackson was being evaluated to come into the league, and you heard people literally saying he should come into the league and look to play wide receiver. Now, black wide receivers don't get underpaid, but when you look at it throughout the course of the years of the NFL, black quarterbacks have been looked at as not being or not having the aptitude to play the position, and they've continued to use these farce examples for far too long, and you begin to see what is deemed undoubtedly systematic racism against the NFL quarterback to keep the idea of what a quarterback is at the top of the list. So, Free, I have to ask you, is the NFL systematically racist, or am I tripping?
I don't think you're tripping. That's always been evident throughout the history of the league when it was noted that they never felt blacks could play the quarterback position in particular. And then it translated even to how when we started seeing more black quarterbacks in the college level as they transitioned to the pros, you saw the different rhetoric surrounding these quarterbacks. It was always on the physical attributes and the athletic gifts, but
absolutely,
to their white counterparts, it was always spoken of the IQ and the student of the game aspect, and they're great signal callers and can read defenses. So there's always been this stereotype of quarterbacks, white quarterbacks being more intelligent to play the position, and it even goes back to the Wonderlic personnel test.
Let me stop you right there, so I can, because I want to be able to dig into something real quick that you just said. You talked about them having the aptitude, so let's just or being great signal callers or students of the game. So let's just assume that assertion is true. Let's just assume that. Is it because they don't have the ability, or would it be because quarterbacks black quarterbacks in particular, because of their athleticism, have been misused and have always been touted to do something more than what it would be that they have to do? Because if you're teaching a quarterback, this breaks down, run, I don't care who you're teaching that to. If you're telling them that, hey, if this breaks down, run, or and you're not actually teaching them the game, then you could be so. And I'm not, and I want everybody to understand that what I'm doing right here with this is I'm throwing a monkey wrench in the idea, because again, I just want to bring it out to say that if you're not teaching the game to them properly, then no, they wouldn't get it. Would that? Am I far off from that?
I think that's a little off, because when your job's on the line, if you're going to have a black quarterback in the position, I don't think you're going to misguide them or coach them, as you put it, so much to the fact of maybe we limit the play calling, or maybe they're limited to a degree because they might feel they need to have more hands-on with the black quarterback because of the athletic gifts, and they're not seen as much as the intellect. I'll give it to you in that regard. I won't say totally misusing, because you got to find a way to make it work because your job's on the line. But
this is what I mean by that, and I'm talking specifically about misusing, is because when you have someone, and this, I mean, I'm going to use the Michael Jordan factor in this, because first 7 years, regardless of how people want to tout it or what have you, however you feel about Michael Jordan, whatever, first 5 years of Michael Jordan's career was misused. Period. Like there was. We just saw that again in The Last Dance. The first 5 years of his career was misused, and it was because of all the things that he could do And to me that was evident because you got a player, you got a coach in Phil Jackson who came in and said, "No, Mike,
Well,
we're going to use you this way, and you have to learn to play
I,
the game
I
differently."
disagree. I disagree from the standpoint of they still had success, whether we call it misuse. I think it's just who has the right vision to make that quarterback itself. Because when we look
Gotcha.
at how many black quarterbacks came to the league and they changed positions, or they may have been uh, maybe a backup in case of injuries or stuff. So I think when we started seeing black quarterbacks placed in this position, I think I will say early on there may have been some over management because of the trust levels. But I think through the years, when you see the Russell Wilsons, the Cams, and everybody that have shown we can lead teams, Donovan McNabb's, even going a little
Yeah.
further back to Doug Williams, Warren Moon, I think it's lessened the distrust. So I will say in that, to your point of misusage, I would say uh, maybe to the degree of not fully using their talent. Yes, in that way, or getting the most out of their talent. So I do understand what you're saying to that regard. But like I say, it's a fine line because I do think coaches still try to use those attributes that players have.
Yeah.
But sometimes that can be misused, as you say, to where we want to feature a lot more running and doing stuff to take advantage of the athleticism and
Yeah.
not opening up the playbook to show that they can
Yeah.
read and pass against defenses just as well as any other quarterback.
Yeah,
So
because and I'm only looking at it from the standpoint of mismanagement because there's an opportunity to mismanage players, and when you do, then they don't get an opportunity to learn certain aspects of the game, and that's a hard pill to swallow for me when you consider all of what they can do. But more importantly than that, or more important than that, when we looked at this Cam Newton thing again, it seems to me that nobody really has the opportunity or has the awareness to call this out the way that it needs to, other than Richard Sherman, because honestly, Richard Sherman was the one that made me think about it differently and look at it and go, you know what, there is a serious issue here. Because when you go back and you if you listen to ESPN in the morning and people talk about it, what you hear is, yeah, it's going to be incentive laden, and you're seeing these former NFL players, black by the way, NFL players, protect the NFL by saying, well, you don't know what Cam's injury is going to be. If that's the case, then explain Sam Bradford to me. Like you're going to have to go back and explain Sam Bradford. Even Peyton Manning, coming off of what was almost considered to be a career-ending neck injury, came back and got $95 million for 5 years in his last deal. Now, Peyton Manning is different because he had won a Super Bowl already, and he had broken just about, or was on the way to breaking all of Dan Marino's records when he did it. So he's a little bit different. But when you put in front of me the Jason Fitzpatricks and the Sam Bradfords and more importantly the Mitch Trubisky's of the world, there were two black quarterbacks that every single scout and everybody you could respect said that if you're going to get a quarterback in that draft, it should be either Patrick Mahomes or it should be, what's the kid name from Clemson? Forgot his name already.
Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson. They were the number one and number two. That's who should go. And the Chicago Bears picked Mitch Trubisky. And you're going to have to explain that to me because it's not like Mitch Trubisky had groundbreaking statistics in college. You had 1 year of real data on Mitch Trubisky. You had 2 years of real data on